Hello, everyone. We're here for the very first time on lindaschool Facebook page for our new series of interviews with ex-lindaschool students who we are so curious about, really looking forward to finding out what wonderful things they have been doing with their lives. And today we have Natércia Rodrigues-Lopes with us, who was our
Hello.
student quite a few years ago. Do you remember how many years ago, Natércia?
About 10 years, maybe more?
Maybe,
More
maybe.
years.
I'm not sure either, but it was, time flies, but it was quite a long time ago.
It was, yes.
So, Natércia, let me just introduce you briefly, and then you can actually pick up from there. So, Natércia has a bachelor's with master's in chemistry from the University of Leicester, and then a PhD again in chemistry from the University of Warwick, and is now ending a research fellowship with that university. And she's a research scientist into spectroscopy, which you might briefly explain what that means. And she's also an aspiring writer who enjoys writing on life and science and wants to make knowledge more democratic. What a wonderful dream to make come true with your own example and your own work. So, Natércia, please fill us in on the gaps here.
Okay, so let's start with spectroscopy, perhaps. What that means is just the interaction between lights and matter. So, for example, what I did my PhD on was sunscreens. So sunscreens have active ingredients that absorb the radiation from the sun and then do all sorts of interesting chemistry. And I was looking at that. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that has to do with how light interacts with stuff around us, um, that's what I'm keen to look at, because it's what makes electrons move around, and
Mm-hmm.
where the electrons go defines how chemistry happens, and therefore it controls, how we get energy from food, how we manage to see colors.
Wow,
Everything.
that's very promising then for all of us.
Yeah, so I find it fascinating, how these tiny particles move around and where they decide to go, and how and why. That's really what makes me tick. So that's the research that I do. um and then, about the other bit about wanting to make knowledge more democratic, I think that is something that came along much more recently, as I moved on and on with a career in academia, and what I do is produce knowledge. But I publish scientific articles in journals that the people I care about, family and friends, they don't get to see, and even if they did, it's not necessarily accessible to them.
Mm.
Uh, I was quite lucky that the project I was involved in, I always did open source science, which means that the articles that I publish are not behind a paywall, so you can access them. But and that's not the case for a lot of the science that gets produced. You have to pay if you want to read the articles. But access goes a lot beyond just being able to look at a scientific paper. What does it mean for your everyday? What does it mean for people?
Right, because what
So
you actually are doing as scientists is finding things that are interesting to us, right?
yes, but people don't always get to see that.
Yeah.
I think the scientific community needs to do, and academia in general, we need to do a lot more work connecting with people and telling them why, not just telling them why it matters, but asking ourselves why it matters to the people around us. you know
Mm-hmm.
why should people care about the electrons moving around? We need to ask these questions, because otherwise it becomes, what are we doing? What's the purpose of what we're doing in the big picture aspect? What's the point? I
So
think
you
that's an
believe
important question to ask.
if knowledge, and in this case science, becomes more accessible to the public in general, it can be much more significant and have much more of an impact. So it doesn't stop with academia.
Yes, and I think that's very important, and we're seeing that now with this pandemic. I think people are perhaps for the first time realizing things about how the scientific knowledge gets produced, and are very confused, and rightly so, because we have these. One day you have a piece of news that say it's this way, no, it's that way, no, but actually it's that other way, and this back and forth of ideas and showing and disputing, and this is normal to a certain extent. This is how science happens. But over the years, this process has been happening in the ivory tower, sort of hidden away from everyone. People have not seen this process. And now, because access to information is much faster, people are now really confused as to, why is it that these scientists keep saying one thing and then the other? Like, what's happening? So they have access to information, but that doesn't mean they
know
have
how to
access
understand it.
Yes, and that's very important, because what we're facing now is people saying, well, why should I listen to scientists in science? I mean, they change their mind overnight, so what's the point? And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous.
So here's one of your ex-colleagues, João Gregório, from your own English class. Hi, João.
Indeed.
So, wow, Natércia, when you were at lindaschool over 10 years ago, and you were always a very, very active young girl in society, at your school. You were working, you were studying, you were actually saving to be able to go and study in London or in England, and you were always creating. I don't know where you found the time, really, and how you managed to muster the courage to go alone and face the total unknown. Like, you didn't even have a room, as far as I remember, that you told us in a session we had at the school. You didn't have anyone there waiting for you, like, yeah, now Natércia is coming to our home and we're going to take care of her. Like, you were just this vessel of courage going forth, sailing the unknown seas. And now, all of this time after that, you've done your PhD and you're doing something that most people find is rocket science. Really is sort of like far out there. It's such a privilege to, first of all, to see how far you've gone with your life, and how amazing it is that you've achieved your dreams one by one, with a lot of persistence, a lot of perseverance, I'm sure a lot of tears as well, and a lot of falling down and standing up again. And now you're basically a native English speaker, I would say. Like, you were learning English with us at the time, right? And you did your certificate in advanced English. But now, don't you find that maybe it's even easier to speak English than Portuguese?
Oh dear, absolutely. I sort of feel that I now speak two languages almost not very well, because now sometimes I want to say things and they come out in English and I'm like, gosh, how would I say this in Portuguese? And then even some words, I'm like, and certain expressions that you can't translate directly, certain ways of saying things, it's so difficult sometimes to translate. So yeah, I find myself, I mean, it's funny. I remember when I did my FCE with lindaschool, there was I think it was Emma back then that said something along the lines of, what you really need to do is to stop thinking in Portuguese and then translating in your head and putting it into English. You need to think in English. And God, is that right? I mean, that's it. And now a lot of my thinking process happens in English already.
So if you were gonna give a current learner who wants to expand their English knowledge, you would say, you know, that's one of the things you should aim for, is managing to think in the language you are learning.
Yes, but it's definitely a learned skill, and it takes a long time, and
João
it's a
says
bilingual.
bilingual, so sort of say bye-bye to your other language.
To both. Yeah, say bye to both, because you're always sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
But absolutely, it's but it takes I think it takes some immersion in the language as well, because my English was, I think, quite good by the time I came to England. But then you have to deal with people speaking fast and with dialects, and it really takes you being immersed in that.
So basically, no matter how far you go in your English learning, you should always find some sort of immersion experience so that you can actually sort of, I believe, absorb it into your cells, into your whole body, so that you start really becoming that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, not not all of what you're going to absorb is grammatically good.
Yeah.
I recently taken to saying in it instead of isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And you pick it up, and not all of it is, you know, lindaschool approved way of talking and speaking English. but
for your articles,
become...
you need to know that part.
Yes, so it's, yeah, I think the immersion, it's what makes the difference, and a lot of listening to it and reading in English and really getting acquainted with the language. It's what makes the difference.
So I'd like to ask you a question. So in what way did studying at lindaschool influence your path, not only as an English speaker, I would say as a person, as in doing what you became, what you came to do?
Yeah, well, I think so. My experience with lindaschool, I sort of came to it a bit late in the game, if we can say it like that, because I joined because I needed the certificate to join university. That's why I joined. And so it was a bit later in life, later in the year as well. And I remember that when I joined mid-year, there was this, you know, I needed to do a test to make sure that my abilities were with the rest of the class, to make sure that I wouldn't, you know, be misplaced in a class and then just not take anything out of the experience. And I remember doubting myself a lot, because, like, well, these people have been learning English, you know, twice a week for weeks, for years, and, you know, I've had it in school, but it's different. But I did it anyway, and I got it, and, you know, it all worked out. And so it's always an experience that I look back to say, you know, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't, who knows, but go for it.
So
I mean,
in a
what do
way
you have
that
to
also
lose?
influenced the way you approached the rest of your challenges, basically.
Yeah, and it's so I've done some teaching myself during my PhD, and I met someone that that taught me about this this concept of self-efficacy. So moments in your life where you prove to yourself that you can do it. It doesn't matter really what it is that you can do it, but that, just that you can, whatever it is, you can. You have the ability within you. And I think joining lindaschool was one of those moments where I told myself that if I put my mind to it, I can. And in this case was joining an English class mid-year, not ever having attended private English classes, but it could have been anything. So it helped with a sense of self-efficacy, which I think was very important. And also it was another activity that I put on my schedule and helped with doing a million things at the same time and juggling all of the things, which I think it's a skill that it's very necessary for life and the marketplace, if you want to think of it that way. But being able to juggle the several dimensions of you and work on all of them is an important skill as well, I think.
Yeah, I remember you never failed with your homework or anything. You were super efficient all the time. So no matter how many activities you had on your schedule, you did not sort of become slack with any of them.
I think because as well, it was something I was doing because I deeply wanted it. I was learning English because it was something I wanted and I needed it. And you know, when I joined, so I don't come from a family that has a lot of money. And when I joined to pay the monthly installments to be at lindaschool, my parents had to turn around and say, well, while you're there, you know, no birthday presents, no Christmas presents, because the money's being funneled onto something else. And I said, all right, fine. But then, you know, I'm giving up something to have something else that I want. Well, I better make it worth it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and the way to make it worth it was to not slack.
What would you say to, so we have some students who are learning just because their parents make them, but they're now sort of at B2 level, so FC or CAE, which is C1 level, and so they would much rather not be, but their parents want them to do that. What would you advise a youngster like that?
I think, well, first of all, in life we all do things we don't want to do. And there is a growing or a growth experience in learning to just live with that and do it, but also realize that it is a privilege.
Your microphone is failing a little bit. Oops. No.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, now it's good.
Now it's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now again, your microphone's not working again.
Let's see if it's the connection.
Yeah,
now?
Good. Yes.
Okay. And now still?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that
You're saying it's a privilege.
It is a privilege, yes. And you know, I know that as a teenager is we often look at our parents as dictators that tell us what to do, when really we want to be the ones telling them what we want to do. And that is great. That is, you know, forming our identities is a very important part of life. But if your parents are paying the money and going through the trouble of putting you through private English schooling, it's not because they want to make your life miserable. It is likely because they see the value in it, and there is a lot of value in it. And they are trying to set you up the best they can for the rest of your life. So you've got the privilege to be there. You know, make the most of it. I mean, there's worse things they could be forcing you to do. Sit in a classroom twice a week for a while and do a bit of homework and learning a new language, which gives you access to half this world, and to a much wider marketplace, for example. It's silly to complain about that.
Yeah.
So you'll make the most of it.
Like in most things in life, instead of complaining, if we open up our hearts and receive it, we can really make the most of it, right? One last piece of inspiration, I would say, because you are an achiever and you have really achieved everything you set out to. What would you share with children and youngsters towards helping them actually go for their dreams and never, ever, ever give up?
I think that's so difficult because, well, first of all, let me say I I am convinced I am not special. I don't have any sort of, I don't know, gene or
superpower,
magical, like, yeah, it's nothing like that. It's setting myself a goal, setting myself a vision of myself, and having had the opportunity for, to develop this self-efficacy, the I can, and as empty as that sounds, is going for it, but also knowing that achieving things is not a thing that you do in a linear fashion and you go for it and you get it. That's not how it works. Gosh, the amount of times I thought about giving up, that I thought that this wasn't for me, the tears, the despair, the difficult moments. I mean, I've had a difficult moment right with this pandemic, that I found myself stuck in unemployment for a few months, and then income was a problem, and it's sort of looking like it's solved now, but even after 10 years of working hard, I had to look at my life and be like, oh,
your sound again. Yeah, now it's good.
now.
Yeah, no, it's off again. Good now. Yeah.
But yeah, the idea that you have to keep fighting. You don't just go and get it. You have to keep fighting for it.
You have to be consistent, right?
And resilient.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a wonderful piece of advice. And also, when I said never give up, sometimes there are dreams that really are not worth all of the willingness we put into them, and maybe they were just a childhood dream that makes no sense at another age. And sometimes it's also useful to let go. So we have to learn how to feel what is appropriate for us at each moment in our lives. And sometimes we had a dream when we were 10 years old that was just that, a dream when we were 10 years old. And maybe when we're 25 or 30, it no longer makes sense. So there's no point going out of your way to make something happen, and see that it's not happening, and then go on, because life might just be telling you, just move on, let it go. So there's the two sides to this coin, right?
Yeah. And I think other two things I would add to that is, first, who or what are you doing it for? If it's hurting you and you keep going, why do you keep going?
Yeah. Do you want approval, maybe, or something like that? Is that what you're striving for?
Now, I am guilty of that big time. Yeah. So I sometimes tell this. I now openly tell the story of how second year of my PhD, I wanted to give up. I was done. I just couldn't. But I felt shackled to it. I felt that I couldn't give up. I would let myself down. I would let my family down. I would look like a loser, like a failure. And I was shackled to it, and it hurt. And I had some bad months. And
maybe if you had let go, it wouldn't be that bad anyway, right? So,
but the thing is,
but you managed.
But I ended up letting go for a while. Actually,
wow.
There was like 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 months that I didn't officially leave, but I was clocking in my hours, scrolling through Facebook while I was in the office, not really doing anything, and getting out of there to go do my Thai boxing and not really caring. For 2 or 3 months, I had, for all intents and purposes, given up.
Okay.
And then my supervisor had a chat with me and was like, look, I see what's happening. What's going on? And we had a conversation, and he said, look, this is yours. This is your project, your PhD, your life.
So you have to decide.
Yes, it will be what you make of it. Now, what do you want to make of it? And at the point where I was like, okay, I could give up if I wanted to give up, and I let go of that pressure of not being able to give up. And when I took it upon myself to make it work, then it worked.
So then
Then
you
it
were no
worked.
longer shackled. You were making a clear choice.
Yes, exactly.
That's a different, completely different point of view. So you were not doing it for your family or for everyone else's approval. You were now doing it from another decision, a more mature point inside of yourself.
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's such a brilliant piece of advice. Brilliant, brilliant. This conversation, Natércia, is so precious. I hope it reaches loads of our students, and not only equally children, youngsters, and adults can make a lot of sense out of this very precious information and inspiration, that example, life example that you're sharing with us. Thank you so much, Natércia.
No,
You're
thank you for
making it
inviting
hard
me.
for the next ones coming in the following interviews, which I'm so looking forward to. And on the other hand, I'm sort of, wow, what a privilege and honor to have this really beautiful and very meaningful conversation with you, Natércia. Thank you so much.
I'm very honored to be able to, if it helps anyone to give back a little bit of what I got, very honored to be able to do that.
Wow, thank you. So, in a sense, we could say I'm actually, wow, you got this actually even from being at Linda School as well. And that's, wow, that's much more than learning a language, really. It's life skills, it's making your life worth it. And that's
And
huge.
you know what, Tanya, I every time I sometimes get interviewed for like magazines and things to share my experience as a woman in science.
Mm-hmm.
And I often get asked, who's my inspiration? Where do I get my inspiration from? And who made me uh, choose this path and stuff? And the answer is inevitably my teachers.
Yeah,
My teachers throughout my life have been the people who have given me the skills, made me believe in myself
all the time.
throughout. I mean, being a teacher is a life changing profession, and I am so grateful for all the teachers that I've had, and I respect teachers so much. And to this day, they are, will be, and were my inspiration to choose the path that I did.
Wow. I hope my colleagues are listening, but if they're not listening now, they will. And I have also been your teacher, so thank you so much for also for the honor and privilege in that sense. And yeah, being a teacher is such a responsibility. If people just stopped to realize the amount of responsibility we hold in our hands, and that they can, and students could realize they can get much more if they stop complaining, as we said just now, and really make the most of each experience. And of course, there's all sorts of teachers and there's all sorts of students, but our learning path in life is to actually interact with everyone from the best space we can get within the relationship with each other, no matter who it is. So it's always an honor and a privilege, no matter what teacher you have, no matter what student you have, because each person is our master in our life. Definitely.
Yeah.
And this for me has also been the case, like you're sharing. My teachers were so relevant in my life. And yeah, that's it. And my students as well. So now I'm having a conversation with the next student and who's teaching us and everyone so much. It's wow, it's just beautiful.
And I think that also the learning process is your first chance at practicing your resilience, because learning is often uncomfortable, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're learning, you need to be at the edge of what you know, and when you encounter something you don't know or you don't master, it's easy to feel uncomfortable and insecure. And the easy thing is to shut down to the learning process, and it's like, no, I
And
don't feel
pretend it's
comfortable
not
at
there
that.
anymore, right?
Yes, but if you take it as a challenge and make that your first challenge and engage with it and overcome it, this is the small steps that you can start to make to train and to practice your resilience and your persistence. And we have 12 years of schooling, plus the people who have the privilege to be at lindaschool, which is teaching on top of their compulsory public schooling. um, that there's so many chances for you to practice being resilient, to practice overcoming challenges. So take those opportunities, do it.
Yeah, I believe fear of failure is one of the most one of the darkest fears of many, many people, and that stopped them from striving for achieving their best and for really being able to live their dreams, because it keeps on hanging out there and saying, no, don't do it, it's not worth it, and so on. And it's not true. It's just a self-sabotage system going on. And don't listen to
I
that
think
voice.
Yeah, your brain lies to you. But I also think that comes from the fact that we become so competitive.
Yeah.
We are taught from very early age these days that we need to be better. We need to get the golden star. We need to
and comparing
be more.
each other, right?
Yes, and we get so competitive that failure hurts even more, because you're not just failing, you are in comparison
There you are.
deficient.
So there's the other part that you were saying, that you might be letting down your family and the people you think you're supposed to be good for, and on the other hand, you are sort of actually failing yourself and everything. You believe that you sort of
and we compare ourselves to each other so much these days, and it's so toxic.
Yeah, so another good piece of advice would be, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. It's your life. Just like your teacher told you with the PhD. It's you have to decide what you're going to do, it's not about what everyone else is doing, and if you can be as good or better or whatever. This is not the point. So never compare, right?
And it's so difficult to do, and I still do it. And and it doesn't matter what you're doing with your life, someone else is going to be doing something different, and then you compare yourselves to them. It's like, well, but I'm not doing that. Ooh, so am I
fortunately
less worthy? Or
fortunately, we are all unique, and we're not doing the same thing, fortunately. So we've got Margarida Fernandes here, who is like you. She is into music, and she has a really heavy schedule, and saying, yeah, no doubt, she knows what she's talking about. Thank you, Margarida. Thank you for commenting. Okay, Natércia, so I think we can... Hello? You know her?
I was just going to say that I know Margarida very well.
Oh, brilliant.
I used to attend choir with her.
There you are.
Confirm.
Because Margarida is into music, and she's a hard worker. Congratulations, whatever you're doing, Margarida. Keep it up.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Natércia. So I think we've really shared some very, very relevant topics here. This can even now be the theme for a class. This video can be used for practicing English and inspiring at the same time.
I'm very glad that it is of use.
Oh, definitely. A very, very good use. Thank you so much, Natércia, for accepting this invitation. You're the first one, so I'm happy that we kicked off with this note. That was really, wow, yeah, lots of sound advice. And please listen in on the next ones. And Margarida says, thank you. Thank you so much as well, Margarida.
Thank you.
And so see you around. I'll keep on looking out for what you're producing, reading your articles, and looking at the way you explain things that seem so complex.
I hope I'm looking to do a lot more writing in my blog on science in life, as I was saying. So hopefully I can get a message out. But yeah.
Brilliant,
And
brilliant. So
perhaps
keep
one
your
day
eyes open for Natércia, eh? Please, yeah, perhaps one day.
Perhaps one day a book, who knows?
Wow. Okay, so let's just wait for that. I'm sure that's coming out for sure. With your resilience and your determination, definitely, if you've made up your mind, that's gonna happen. Okay, so see you next time. We will be with another of our ex-students very, very soon. And meanwhile, have a wonderful Sunday. And Natércia, you too.
Yes,
So
and you
wonderful.
and everyone.
Thank you. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Brilliant.
Thank you. Bye-bye.